It's the inaugural record release from Discograffiti. Metal Machine Muzak is a slanted tribute to Lou Reed's divisive 1975 double LP Metal Machine Music. Lester Bangs called it the greatest album ever made, but no matter how it hits you, it's always been the ultimate music freak secret handshake. My ambient reimagining features 4 16-minute 1-second tracks, just like the original, and each one was created by a top-shelf indie rock visionary. Lou Barlow from Dinosaur Jr. and Sebadoh, Corey Hansen from Wand, W. Cullen Hart from the Olivia Tremor Control, and Mark Robinson from Unrest. That's right, not a slouch in the bunch, unlike 99% of the compilations you've ever begrudgingly purchased for the one and only band on it you just had to hear. Metal Machine Muzak will not be available on streaming. The digital version is finally available for purchase, and the vinyl will be shipped this summer. Pre-orders for the LPs are available now, but they're going fast. They're being produced in a very limited edition run of 300 numbered 180-gram metallic silver double LP gatefold copies, only 100 of which can be ordered online. These copies will be numbered from 1 to 100, and they're first come, first served. To order either the digital or the vinyl, just head over to patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Again, that's patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Don't miss out on Metal Machine Muzak, the ambient experience designed to make Brian Eno run screaming. Were you all feeling pressure in the group at this time? Had the mood changed to the best of your recollections?
Good question.
That sounds like a yes. Do you have any memories of how it might have changed outside the studio?
Later, yes, but not yet. Not with this album.
That brings us logically to Bruce. I know, Bruce, at this point, stuff was going on. You know, over the decades, the three of you haven't exactly been forthcoming about what happened, about, the disintegration of the band.
As Chris developed and he became more of a genius all the time, I think it kind of became his way or no way.
Welcome to Discograffiti, the Music Obsessives podcast that gives freaks like you and me the chance to connect with a brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and with 3 to 4 episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. I am thrilled to announce that I am no longer aligned with the podcast network Osiris Media. I am a free man. I'm also a man supporting a wife and a 5-year-old son who's decided upon Discograffiti as his sole source of income. So if you like what you're hearing, please Venmo me a tip at David-Gebroe. That's Gebroe. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on the free design. Psst. Along with our special guests, Sandy, Ellen, and Bruce Dedrick, who will be taking us by the hand and giving us a guided tour of their years as objectively the greatest sunshine pop group of all time. We'll also be rating all their releases, every last LP, promo effort, and sidelined obscurity you can think of, although some of the more obscure ones will only be included in the Patreon edits of this series. This, then, is part 3, culled from a 5.5-hour interview with all 3 siblings, the only one of its kind in existence. And here's just a choice sampling of what's bandied about in this podcast. Why the band began disintegrating and the reasons behind Bruce's departure, the hard left into the weird world of the Starscape Singers, the Canadian chorale into which most of the free design were absorbed after the band split, and a deep dive exploration of Stars Time, Bubbles Love, Free Design sings for very important people, One by One, There Is a Song, and Peekaboo. Before we kick things off, just a quick word from Sandy.
Hey lads and ladies, I'm Sandy Dedrick, lead singer of The Free Design. If you think kites are fun, wait till you hear the extended director's cuts of the Free Design episodes Bruce, Ellen, and I did with Discograffiti. If you're as much of a completist as I'm guessing you are, you probably won't want to settle for the truncated versions of these interviews, seeing as this has been the most comprehensive interview the Dedrick clan has ever given. The lieutenant tiers got the extended cut, and the major tiers got the super extended ultimate cut. Support Dave Gebro because the guy works his butt off on this. Go ahead and treat yourself to a Patreon subscription at patreon.com/Discograffiti.
If you're a Free Design superfan like me, you'll want to turn this free version off right now and opt for the ultimate major cut of this episode on our Patreon page, which features 30 additional minutes of essential material, including overviews of entire releases that we had to cut for time. And you can find it in our Patreon shop for mere pennies at patreon.com/Discograffiti/shop. Or just subscribe for access to the complete versions of all our shows. Longer cuts are on the Lieutenant tier, and our longest ultimate cuts, they're on the major tier. Even if you're on the fence, just head over there because it's finally free to become a basic member. Okay, first things first, you need to know just how seriously I take this craziness. Discograffiti is a music obsessive's dream come true. The guest and I explore an artist or band's entire discography in a futile but valiant attempt to reach a higher truth, which often is cleverly disguised as a nerdy compendium of star ratings and lists. The show is heavily researched, and the music is always reassessed with fresh ears. We don't just cover albums. We do a searingly honest deep dive analysis of all EPs, singles, comp tracks, relevant solo work, and sometimes even bootlegs and live stuff. Every release is slapped with an objectively accurate star rating between 0 and 5, which allows us all, the real reason we do this, the Tootsie Pop reward at the center of the rock and roll lolly, to come face to face with the true shape of an artist's overall arc. Coming up, we've got Tom Morello rating the MC5, Michael Imperioli rating his favorite band, The Smiths, an interview with Tom Bailey from the Thompson Twins, Robert Schneider rating the Strawberry Alarm Clock, and a massive, many-guested launch into the Beach Boys' entire catalog. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. And away we go then! Now we stumble upon the 70s, which you guys had in a vice-like grip, as far as I'm concerned. Stars, Time, Bubbles, Love. I'm just going to preempt talking about this record by saying this is just a masterpiece. And I love that cover art. And I love the trippy inside cover, especially knowing you guys had no use for drugs whatsoever.
That's how this interview contrasts with Michelle Phillips, just about the drug use. We didn't even know from drugs, you know. I didn't even do marijuana until much later. And I did a few tokes on that, and that didn't do much for me. So I didn't do that anymore.
Regardless, your music, especially this record, a couple others like it, that really send me to a whole lot of places. Drugs not needed. I mean, the journey is in the music. And this is a real kind of turning point that never was, in a way, because I feel like there was an evolution that started to happen here and then was curtailed, I'm guessing, because of circumstances. But there's much more of a psychedelic forward and funk forward move on this record. You can tell that if not all of you, at least Chris was attempting to branch out and knock down some boundaries. And in the words of Robbie Baldock, who's, I guess, a free design historian, Stars is where the free design gets funky. I don't necessarily see funk all over the record, but there's moments here that are standalone in your catalog. And also, if you look at the cover, which is just so beautifully colorful and playful, it is a stark contrast to the monochromatic direction that your covers became once Bruce exited the band. One interesting thing about this record that certainly would be illuminating to have Chris talk about this, but his actions speak volumes. And here's what I mean by that. He's definitely put a lot of work into this. You can hear the work that went into this record. And then, as much as I love the children's record, but there's a scaling back, There's a scaling back in a lot of the arrangements, and there's a scaling back in original material because you're pulling stuff from other records. And then there's just a continuous scaling back after that. So I feel like this is the end of him throwing every last strand of pasta at the walls.
Yeah, that's a good description, I think.
Maybe.
I feel like there was a gradual scaling back, and the scaling back concludes logically with there is a song, because chorale and fugue scales it back to do, re, mi, fa, so. And then there's no words. It's just a cappella. It's like scaling it back to the serpent almost eating its own tail and starting from scratch, just gathered around the Dedrick living room table again. Let's start and go track by track. It's a very special record. Bubbles, which is later covered by the Powerpuff Girls TV show, which of course you knew that was going to happen back in 1970. One of the great things about the free design, and one reason why I connect so heavily, is there is nothing sad about bubblegum. And yet the chorus is bubblegum kind of keeps my heart from getting heavy and crying. And then the bridge, Ma and Pa are arguing again. Today I lost my best friend. The kitty has a little cold and Grandmama's getting older. I mean, this is deep stuff for a song about bubblegum. I was on a podcast last night where these guys were talking about how Sunshine Pop was their parents' music, stuff that, their parents forced them to listen to. And I was talking about your material and saying the best Sunshine Pop will belie the nature of the music. So you feel like there's something saccharine going on. But then if you investigate further, the duality of what's happening is endlessly conceptually interesting. Bubbles is the heartbeat of what makes the free design special. There's happiness, there's extreme melancholy in it. It's a total masterpiece, and it's one of my 5 favorite songs of yours. And then the tiny little pop and the laughter at the end is one of the great laughs in music history. It's a great moment.
That was a goodie.
That was good. Thank you, Ellen.
Is that you?
Yeah, it was Ellen.
Okay.
No, Chris did the pop.
Was Chris, let me ask you a question, okay? And I'll throw myself in the ring first, okay? I've been on antidepressants for a long time. I have a definite depressive streak. I mean, I am up and down. That's why I connect so squarely with your music. And you don't have to answer this question.
Is that what it takes?
Well, I mean, there's extreme happiness in your music, like almost crazy, ridiculous happiness, running through fields with kites and umbrellas. And I mean, that's extreme. You guys are not kids, you're not adults, but even people in their 20s don't get that happy usually. But, you cannot turn your back on the sadness, or maybe let's call it wistfulness, that's in your music. Is there depression that runs in your family, or did Chris have depression specifically?
No.
Well, not that I know of, but I know about depression, put it that way. And I think Mom had some of that.
And Chris did toward the end of his life, I know from his second wife. I don't know about free design times, but yeah, when you look at the lyrics and that back and forth, it's possible he did. I don't know about that time. And I didn't know about you.
If he did, and I was pretty close with Chris up until, the evolution of the free design. But before that, I mean, we played ball. I never had a hint from him of any kind of depression. But, that might develop later too, because we were kids.
I don't feel he had any depression. And what I feel is he had an in-depth inquiry, like he was very aware. And, if you say, well, Ma and Pa are arguing, it's like he had an overview or a point from which he could view that allowed this juxtaposition of, sure, it's great. And yet this is still going on. But the music superseded it all because the music was beautiful. So you were amazingly perceptive in picking that out, because most people would be carried by the music, and when we were recording, it was fun. I didn't ever feel, gosh, this is negative, but there could be nostalgia for sure.
By the way, I don't feel like it's negative at all. I mean, to me, It gives it so much more depth. Like the Powerpuff Girls version, it's very easy to suck out the underlying wistfulness and just make it a song about bubblegum. It's very easy to do that. And one can do that very simply. But to me, it brings up things like Steely Dan, which is so candied on the outside that if you don't listen closely, you won't know that it's a Trojan horse for lyrics about drug overdoses, prostitutes, you would never know because it's, again, with a very intense jazz leaning and so tricked out, so worked out that they don't carry themselves like slouches, so you would never know. Mm-hmm. And the Free Designer or Trojan Horse for a lot of deep things. For me, maybe not for everybody, but certainly for me. Tomorrow's the First Day of the Rest of My Life is a great example of, one of the best things about this record is that some of the choices of the covers that you're making, I think the weaker end of the cover choice spectrum would be like Happy Together or California Dreamin', where we're so familiar with it. The best I could say is it's of its time, and it's always good to hear the free design. This is a song that I didn't even know was a cover because you so fully and wholly make it your own that I had no idea this was a cover. I figured for sure this was an original, but it's actually from a Broadway rock musical, which was a thing at the time, called Salvation, which I went back and listened to, and it doesn't even hold a candle to your version. I mean, it's like this rickety, jalopy, Wright brothers playing compared to the Concord of what you've put together. First, there's that jazz fusion-y funk intro, which you'd never know is the prelude to one of your most stately, most gorgeous songs that you've ever laid down. It's perfect. The original is totally unmoving to me. I can't hear this without being sent to a million places.
Yeah, I've heard the original too, and it really is that the same song,
Yeah. Is this Chris picking all these songs to do?
I'll bet by this time, I think early on, Enoch probably offered him different songs to choose from. But I bet he picked this one. And
Enoch's connection was in selection was a little less. I mean, he had to run it by Enoch, I'm sure. But Enoch sort of went along with a lot of what Chris was doing. He really trusted him in those selections and everything.
This first streak, especially the first batch of songs, Chris's genius is on full display. Like the next song, Kiji's Ouija, is it flutes? The diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle, those flute runs, those trills. Is it clarinet, piccolo? They tumble up and down so manically, and the melody is so insanely serpentine, but yet never taking its finger off being a catchy pop song. I mean, totally catchy. So Butterflies Are Free, another Broadway adaptation that I had no idea was a cover. No clue. I found a single by a group called The Cinnamon Ship, and I'm guessing that Chris adapted it from that. You can find that on YouTube. A great song.
That one's my favorite.
I really like that song, too.
Yeah.
Stay Off Your Frown. That's an amazing song. It kind of starts off in a spare way, but man, does it build. It's just stuffed with brass, the funky psych guitar playing along with it. I think if I had to choose just one album side of your entire career, this album side would be the one I would choose. I just think it's a masterpiece. I mean, there's not one song that doesn't blow me away. It's just stunning. Starlight is one of the sleepers of your entire career, I think. I think it's one of the greatest songs you've ever done, and a total heartbreaker for me. Profoundly moving. Sandy, one of your absolute best vocals. The backgrounds are stunning. The vibes sound like the sonic equivalent of Twinkling Stars. And just as, Umbrellas is the apotheosis of just nailing that mood about rain, and Bubbles is the ultimate bubblegum song, this is the ultimate song about night for me. If I could pick one song that to me sums up the mood and the feeling of being outside under the stars at night, it's Starlight.
when we were kids, we didn't have a tent, but on a good night, on a starry night, we would go out on these chaise longue with blankets, and sleep out there looking at the stars. Now it's hard to see stars in the cities.
Worthy of note, that descending bass riff that carries the song out, is
oh yeah, over and over again.
so nice. I mean, what a beautiful way to end that song.
Was that Chuck Rady?
Don't know for sure. Probably.
That was the beauty of being in with those great musicians, because they come up with those things, and then Chris got so he could write some of those things. So that's why I'm saying, like, this album, he could have written that line, and then the bass player could have just embellished it somewhat, and probably did. But that's where the expansion of our knowledge going in the studio, and Chris's writing and everything shows up a lot on this album.
Then there's Laura Nero's Time and Love, another cover that you've totally absorbed into the free design fabric. And then I'm a Yogi, which is awesome because it's as close as you come to that sort of kitschy, psychedelic, spaced out thing. It features Vinnie Bell, the experimental sound designer on electric sitar.
Fun to do and fun to listen back to what Vinny did and also what the engineer did. It was amazing.
I love druggy music made by people who never did drugs. You can always tell that person never really did drugs. And sometimes it falls flat for that reason. And other times it's successful because of that reason. And that to me is I'm a Yogi. I feel like he's having fun with the tropes of psychedelic music without really needing to engage in all the mind-blowing stuff he denigrated on Make the Madness Stop.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Yogi. You could kind of see the incense and the smoke rising. And again, luckily we had musicians that knew a lot about that, doing drugs. So they could take the ideas and really make them real. They had as much fun as we did, but like that may be part of why it sounded so unique.
Right. It's always good to have studio musicians who partook and could fill in the blanks. A couple more covers. Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. Great song. And also a great juxtaposition with I'm a Yogi, because Raindrops is at Squaresville as it comes in a good way. It's a great song. I love Bacharach, but he doesn't do I'm a Yogi type material. And How'd You Do, which is Carol Bayer Sager. But I want to get to That's All People. That's All People, no more from Prospect Avenue. You Can't Buy Me for Another Year or two. I Will Move Within My Papa's Smile. I Will Live and Cry and Create a Newer Harmony, Money Monies. It was Chris talking with you about how he was dissatisfied or coming to an end, or is there not a lot of intra-family communication that typically happens with the Dedricks?
He never talked to me about it. But I figured what his meaning was, that things were coming to an end of some sort.
Well, I think he was tired of being told, like having everything be about, it's like, going to be a hit kind of thing too. And just wanting, desiring to stretch out even more, which, he did later in life. His writing, for movies and Starscape and everything just exploded. And I can only imagine what it would feel like to know, like you're getting these ideas in your head and a record producer or a label saying, you have to do this, which he did and we did beautifully. I was happy doing it. But for someone that has more knocking on the door to come in and be shared, maybe that's part of it.
Were you all feeling pressure in the group at this time? Had the mood changed to the best of your recollections? Had the mood changed at all?
Not in the studio, not with the music.
How about outside the studio?
Good question. Good question.
That sounds like a yes. Do you have any memories of how it might have changed outside the studio?
Not yet. Not yet. Later, yes, but not yet. Not with this album. And I'm only speaking for myself.
That brings us logically to Bruce. I know, Bruce, at this point, stuff was going on. I know stuff was going on. And I know it may feel a touch uncomfortable talking about it, but, I'm so unbelievably curious because you're super talented in your own right. And I know at least the vibe I get from this record is a guy who's saying, meaning like him talking to the universe, not to you guys. Here's what you could have had, but you're not going to have any more of it, so fuck you. Pardon my language. But that's what it feels like. It feels like an extended bird. And then I feel like you're over here going, look, this is just me looking into it because, over the decades, the three of you haven't exactly been forthcoming about what happened, about, the disintegration of the band. I have a crazy relationship with my sister. If we had a group and it was my life's work to be a musician, you play more nights these days than you don't play. So it's in your blood. And my sister was like throwing it away. I'd be pissed on multiple levels.
I don't think it was exactly that way. I think as Chris developed and he became more of a genius all the time, I think it kind of became his way or no way. And I felt that myself. And I think I saw it between other members. a little bit on occasion after I sort of dropped out of the band, and then I could see in family gatherings when they were talking about music and stuff that it was really his way, and his way was a good way. Let's face it. I mean, it was great, but I don't know how to analyze it really any better than that.
Well, you're not out of the band yet, so we don't necessarily have to go there. But around the corner you are, so we'll get there. But I just want to say about Stars, Time, Bubbles, Love, this record's as good as music gets for me. It doesn't get better than this. It's only as good. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. It's a very hard 5 stars. If you're a fan of music, period, this is a must-own. And the CD version includes the unreleased track To a Black Boy, which I'm guessing wasn't released because of the very emboldened upfront race stuff going on in the lyrics. But oh my God, is this a good song?
Phil Ramone had a lot to do with the song. I don't know if he wrote it or co-wrote it. And Phil Ramone and his wife, Anne, who was a really good friend of mine, had 2 sons that they had adopted who were Black. And they all went to the same school, my kids and their kids. And it was an incredible Montessori school in Stamford, Connecticut. So he had a lot to do with that song.
Not many unreleased songs that are kind of cast-offs or masterpieces. 5 stars for this one, too. All right, Sing for Very Important People, 1970. Your 5th album was a children's album inspired in part by Peter, Paul and Mary's album, Peter, Paul and Mommy. It's a combination of original songs, covers, and a few songs that had appeared on some previous albums, including Kites Are Fun, Daniel Dolphin, and Bubbles. And then a cover from your dad, Little Cowboy. You're all naturals for doing this type of material. And again, so grateful that the wistfulness wasn't pulled out. You still have that element in the music. Even when you're covering the theme from Sesame Street, maybe not in that one, but like Children's Waltz, Little Cowboy especially, it's hard for me to hear this stuff without crying. And most children's music is so cloying, and especially having a 5-year-old, nails on the damn chalkboard. But not this. I mean, this gets played ad nauseum in our house. But, interestingly, it takes you back to your less orchestrated, more unaffected roots. So in that way, it turns the ship back from Stars, Time, Bubbles, Love, back in the other direction from whence you came. And Bruce, this is the last record that you're on.
Yep.
Yeah, my favorite song is the one he has a solo on, Don't Cry, Baby. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. So good.
It was a fun album to do. I mean, who doesn't like doing kids songs, and the melodies, like Children's Waltz and Little God. I mean, they're such beautiful and playful melodies. I think it's good that it's more sparsely arranged because kids don't want to listen to an orchestra. They want to hear, voices that they can relate to.
Yeah. I taught a lot of these songs to my classrooms, little kids.
I love that Children's Waltz. Again, the sad sack piece of shit that I am. I love when it descends into that minor key part. The trapdoor of Mysterioso drops out of the song and gives it a depth that it wouldn't have had. It's stunning. And of course, Love You is on this, which, Sandy, that's like your key moment as a writer.
Turned out to be. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Why not? I used it for my little movie.
Yeah, that was so cute.
So evocative. I wish the group had done more a cappella stuff. It works so well. But I really want to talk about Little Cowboy because I literally cannot hear that song without crying. And I need to know anything that you can tell me about this song, about Art writing it or its existence, if you remember anything about it.
Well, first of all, can I ask Bruce if you have that picture of you with your guns and holsters and Bing and Bob? Do you have that handy?
Yeah, it's right up
that
on the.
Explains Little Cowboy to me because Bruce
It's up there on the.
walked out of the house without his holsters and his cowboy boots and his guns. And I think Dad wrote it.
So this is about you, Bruce.
I think so.
To me, this is an incredibly special song.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song.
I mean, if my dad wrote this for me, I would need no more indication that he loved me. No matter what he did, no matter how else he treated me, it's all here in this song. And really, I see this as the end of the line of the original group, is this song, because it's the most orchestrated song on the record. And so in a sense, it's really the last stop for the Bruce version of the group. And it's a song about Bruce. And so I don't see That's All People being the end of the line. Little Cowboy is. The Cowboy Close Your Eyes section is the height of the free design for me. And I'm just so grateful it's repeated at the end, because those massed harmonies that build and build and build, and then that bass melody that is impossibly lengthy, but always tuneful, is so moving. It's just so special. I can't put it into words except to kind of stammer around the point like I am. It's one of my all-time favorite songs. The guy I started this podcast with, Joe Kennedy, who, as soon as I was off the phone in our first installment, I immediately called him. And he'll be the first guy I'd call after this. It's also his favorite song by you guys. Do I love this disproportionately, or is this one of all your favorite tunes? And Bruce, especially for you, is it almost hard to listen to because it's your dad's love letter to you?
No, it's not hard to listen to. Yeah, it's a very nice song, and you see it the way you see it, and that you're pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a song full of love, actually. Everything about it.
I love it because it reminds me of Dad too. That's the thing. Every time you hear it, you feel Dad.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree, Ellen.
Same as Christmas is the Day. You feel. That's
Yes.
what Dad was like. And the same with this one.
Yeah, the songs that you cover that he wrote are just spilling over with love. I mean, it's like pouring water in a glass and just never stopping the pour. It's almost like too much to bear to hear it. So did you play this for your kids? Was this something that was on your turntable, the three of you, for your kids?
Absolutely.
Yep.
5 stars.
Yeah. Agreed. Galaxies.
Okay, so then you left, Bruce. Was there a single incident that precipitated you leaving, or had it been building for a while? I'm guessing it had been building for a while, but what do I know?
Yeah, maybe.
Hi, I'm Dave Gebrow. I threw my career as a licensed hearing instrument specialist in the trash, sold my house, and moved to the East Coast with my wife and 4-year-old son in order to focus on making the ultimate podcast for music obsessives thrive. Now I need your help. Although Discograffiti is rated in the top 2% of all podcasts globally, the economics of this thing are tricky. Becoming a member of Discograffiti's Patreon gives you access to over 100 more exclusive episodes. And moving forward now every Sunday for only $5 a month as a private first class, you get our new weekly show by and for Discograffiti's Patreon family, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. As a lieutenant, you get an ad-free, substantially elongated director's cut of every episode. And you'll be getting the shows a few days earlier than the general populace, which is designed to make you feel even more special than you already are. So when you become a major, you'll be getting access to the ultimate director's cuts of all our sprawling, super deep dive episodes. As far as I'm concerned, these super cuts have absolutely everything that was meant to be heard. Plus, you get yours before the lieutenants get theirs. But that ain't it. You also get all our other series, like Discograffiti's Top 10, our Buried Treasure Show, Rock Cousteau, our Slag Off Show, Queasy Listening, and exclusive limited series like The Private Press with Paul Major. And if you've got no financial worries to speak of, keep in mind that some of the higher Patreon tiers allow you to actually advertise on the show, choose the bands we cover, or even some of the guests we get. For the price of a cup of coffee a week, you can ensure my family's fed, build a music library that'll be the envy of your block, and connect to a thriving community of music maniacs all at the same time. Don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Patreon.com/Discograffiti. Once again, that's Patreon.com/Discograffiti.
As much as a musical genius as Chris was, and this is not only my opinion, I've heard this from other people and musicians, he was didn't have a good bedside manner, it's hard to believe with all the, I've had people say, I've listened to Chris's music and I can't believe, knowing Chris, that he could have written such beautiful music, because there was this other side to him that wasn't so beautiful, and other people saw it. I'm not the only one. And I love my brother, and we were very close prior to the Free Design. We played basketball together, and I took him everywhere with me. He got to play ball against some really good players, and he developed into a very good basketball player too. But the Free Design was a business thing, and it was a family thing, but a business thing. As time went on, it got a little harder and harder for me to deal with it. And as much as I didn't want to do it, I said, I think I'm better off if I'm not involved anymore. I can name specific instances, but I don't think that would be productive to do that. I just wanted to move on.
Did you have an idea about what you wanted to do? Did you want to follow your musical heart, or did you just want to do anything but the Free Design?
Well, I wanted to keep doing music, but I didn't have any, parachute or anything like that. I was lucky I could sing, and I continued to sing on jingles. People hired me because I could go in and sight read the music and blend my voice with other group singers. I wasn't a solo singer.
You have a very developed and distinct pop sensibility. I don't get any kind of second fiddle vibe as far as you and Chris. So I think I'd feel the same way, regardless of anything. I know, as an artist, the clearer my vision is, the more paranoid I am that other people are going to fuck it up, regardless of who those people are. And it's even more difficult if it's family. So you were leaving the band. Was it amicable, or were they not quite the same again between you and Chris after? Did he see it as a betrayal of any kind, or was it I wish you well? Or?
I don't think there was any bad. I don't know. I didn't hold grudges. I don't know how he felt about it. Maybe he felt it was good riddance. I don't know. But Sandy, you were involved. You might know more about how he felt about it.
He never spoke about it to me, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Are you the kind of family that only communicated to each other through music with total clarity?
I think you're onto something there. Definitely.
At least you had music as a vessel.
I feel that Chris never really said this, but when that happened, I understood that it was pretty difficult for Bruce to have creative input when Chris was the one that, had been doing it all those years. And I just thought it was kind of like a necessity in order for Bruce to be able to, do more and develop his own musical life. I definitely missed him when we recorded after that and have his voice and everything. But it just seemed like it was for the better in that way. It didn't seem to me like a negative.
Because Bruce was happy. He was finally free.
Well, I hope so.
Well,
but he's done, my God, he's still playing music. The only time I sing is like when somebody's birthday now. Like every time there's a birthday, that's my cue. I get on the phone and call and sing.
Yeah, he calls me on my birthday.
But you're doing stuff all the time.
February 4th.
Oh, I'll write that down.
Mark that down.
I am.
The only indication in any kind of interview that I saw was something that only alluded that Sandy had said, that there are always family dynamics in an interview that you did, but, nothing specific, and just really for my own curiosity, because, Bruce, when you left, and I told you this, I love all the records the Free Design did. I love them all. But, this is a new phase now that I see. I always designate subjective phases. To me, this is phase 2, Bruce on the Loose, 1971 to 1972, and it's a different band. You take Ringo out of the Beatles, even Ringo, and it's not the Beatles. So one of the hallmarks of the 2 records that the Free Design did without Bruce is what I hear as a Bruce-sized hole in the group. I hear Bruce's absence, and I hear it with orchestration that is more indelicately filling in blank spaces. And I'm not putting it down. I'm saying Bruce was gone, and the empty space, maybe Chris wasn't comfortable keeping that blank space. I feel like by There Is a Song, he was embracing the blank space, and it was more about your folk roots and connecting with the folk roots. The albums I mainly listened to over and over and over to try to get more of a grasp on are these 2. Because first of all, it's writ large right there on the 2 covers. They're monochromatic, sort of black and white, kind of drab looking covers. Admittedly, they're drab looking, especially you got that Jackson Pollock paint splatter on Stars, Time, Colors, Love, which intimates sort of the boundlessness, technicolor possibilities of music. And now it's, we're in the early 70s and we're kind of seeking. Now we're like looking for almost a new sound in a sense. So One by One is from 1971. It was your last recording for Project 3. Do you remember the mood in the recording studio? Was it promising? Was it like, let's wind down with another record? Any feeling in the studio? Or
For me, not winding down, I didn't feel that at all. By the time we got to There's a Song, there was a winding down actually happening. And I certainly felt it then, but not with One by One. And I think it's partly because I really love a couple of the songs on that album. One by One and Thank You All, those two in particular.
Yeah, Friendly Man.
By the way, those aren't the only songs I love on this. Love Me is fantastic. Going Back, Felt So Good is great. Like to Love, which is probably the most traditionally Free Design sounding song on the record. But there's other sort of tone beds that are very different. Light My Fire is
I like that one.
very different.
I like that one.
Yeah, it's really cool. You Are My Sunshine. Whoa, is that a sad version? And then Go Lean on a River is a different direction. Definitely still trying different things. So ultimately, it feels more relaxed. Stars, Time, Bubbles, Love. Chris is throwing everything at the wall and he's got like everything to prove. Doesn't sound like he's got anything to prove here. It's just wanting to put a good collection of songs together. But, I hear mainly You Are My Sunshine is the best example. There's like MOR orchestras that fill the background where Bruce might have been. And that is noticeable if you're doing a really long interview with a group and you listen to something over and over again to try to key in on where Bruce might have been. But I do love the record. I give it 4 stars.
Never thought of it the way that you're hearing it, Dave, where the instrumental could possibly fill in that empty space that Bruce left. That's a really thoughtful consideration.
Well, I'd like to compare it, for example, to Where Do I Go? So Where Do I Go? The orchestration and yourself are interweaving like a double helix of DNA. Intertwined. Now listen to You Are My Sunshine. And it feels like the way that maybe Barry Manilow would be using orchestration to just saturate the stereo space.
Yeah. I understand, yeah.
And then there is a song, I feel like Chris makes friends with the idea that Bruce is gone and embraces the idea of pulling back. But again, it's a reaction to Bruce's absence. But to me, I find that I like this album more because it feels more comfortable in its own skin. Again, with the monochromatic cover, it's almost a concept album because by the end of it, with chorale, it's do, re, mi, fa, sol. And then in fugue, it's wordless a cappella. So it's almost like re-entering the womb of inspiration. Whether or not it was intentional, it's genius because it's like growing up and then growing down again.
Uh-huh.
And I think there's a lot of great stuff on here. Peter, Paul, and Mary, ironically, is, I think, a better song than anything Peter, Paul, and Mary ever did.
Funny how we started out with them, too, singing their songs.
Yeah. Canada in Springtime is fantastic. The Cymbals Ring. The Cymbals Ring feels like it looks forward to a spiritual path that Chris would take. I don't know if it does or doesn't, but the lyrics seem like a seer's journey type of lyric that goes beyond what the Free Design was doing up to that point. Am I reading it incorrectly?
I think you're reading it right.
Had Chris, he had moved to Canada then, so he had already met Dr. Mills and had been doing his searching, even years before that. It was already, he was changing, he was moving. And then, eventually we moved up there too. So this was kind of the last U.S. version of the Free Design, or the Dedricks, I guess you could say.
And no longer on Project 3. Now we're on a small New York label called Ambrotype.
Correct, yeah.
So this felt like a winding down. Did this feel like, let's just do one more and we'll call it a day? Or did you not know this was the last one?
Good question. I felt it was a winding down for the Free Design, definitely.
Were you both thinking, what the heck am I going to do after this? Or did you know?
In terms of singing in a group, at that time, I was living in Connecticut, so I just figured I'll have to find another group.
Ellen, how about you?
I don't know. I think, I mean, Sandy, it was a very interesting time for everybody. We were just getting kind of introduced to what Chris was doing in Canada. And then it was after this album, obviously, but not too far after. And then we started working with him up there and then working with Dr. Mills and him up there. And then eventually we moved up there, to do the music that became the Starscape Singers that Chris wrote and co-wrote with Kenneth Mills. So this is kind of a winding down. And then, the rocket took off after that and the next lifetime happened.
Bruce, if I could ask you, you had mentioned, and frankly, I can see the logic or the decision to have gone this way, but you had told me that you had never heard these two records before, One by One and There Is a Song. Did you listen to those just out of curiosity for this? Did you?
Actually, I thought I had them and they may be down. I mean, I have 400 LPs, I actually want to get rid of them, but I didn't find either one of them. So I have to be honest, I haven't listened to those records ever.
I can't say I blame you. I mean, I can only imagine, regardless of the peace that time can bring, that it had to have been a tumultuous thing. And in the interest of getting on with your life and to find a new direction, why would you want to keep one foot in the past? I'm guessing that had to do with the decision to not listen. And frankly, I don't think it's very controversial to say that the greatest material that the Free Design did was with you in the group.
I would agree. I totally agree with that.
Yep.
And I missed Bruce when he did leave. I missed your voice. I mean, you initiated the Free Design, actually, and you were a lot of fun.
Well, I'm glad to hear all that. That makes me feel good.
It's true.
Regardless of a family's communication style, you took, and this isn't, a vituperative or I'm sure malicious on your part, but you took the heart of the band with you accidentally upon leaving. And, regardless of good material on the records, and There Is a Song, I give that 4 1/3 stars. That's no slouch. I mean, 4 stars and 4 1/3. But, the first streak, all the way up until Sings for Very Important People, not a single release that's under 5 stars for me. I mean, it's just perfection. So then there is a palpable dip. It's not the Free Design really without you. It's a semblance of the Free Design. To your credit, without lingering too much on it, because this will be my last point about you being in the band and then not being in the band. But I always try to circle back around on the It's a Wonderful Life. I always try to circle back around because I look out, I can't see me. So I don't know the effect I have. And you may have only had one songwriting credit in that initial run, notwithstanding your Peekaboo songs, which are terrific. Yeah. But man, were you an essential part of that group.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Thank you for seeing that and saying that.
Yeah.
So was there a formal disbanding? I've seen that it says in the book about art that the group finally disbanded in 1975. And then I've also seen that in 1972, it was over. Was there any formal dissolution of the band?
No, it wasn't a dissolution. It was an evolution. When we moved to Canada and we were singing together there, eventually the Free Design became the foundation for the Starscape Singers.
I didn't listen to all of the Starscape Singers, and I didn't even know about it until we started talking, but the feeling of the music is very different. It's a very, very different thing. It's I wouldn't call it an evolution of the Free Design. I would call it a hard left. It's a very different thing. It's very serious. The playfulness is not there. It's a different, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different, you're going for something very, very different there.
Yeah, it isn't the same.
Yeah. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we're just moving through. We're really just dealing with the Free Design, especially because I had no idea this even existed. It wasn't just the three of you. It was Stephanie and Chris who were involved in the Starscape Singers. Did the three of you just want to throw down a sentence or two about your thoughts about that time?
Well, I had no involvement in that at all.
And I'm finished with my involvement. It's in the past. I've moved on from that. So,
well, but during it, I think that's what you're asking because it is over. But as far as the actual music and the challenge of moving into okay, Sandy, forget it.
No, I'm just, don't you hear that noise?
No, I didn't hear the noise.
Okay. It's from my phone, I think.
Well, anyway, when Starscape sang in Europe, maybe this will be a little bit of a synopsis of it. The musicologists and the critics and, the choral people that knew, what it was to do what that group did, said that music of the 23rd century, they said it was the greatest kind of achievement that you could do with an a cappella vocal type thing. And Chris obviously was into it because he wrote and co-wrote and arranged, over 300 choral pieces. And there were 17 albums recorded. And the last piece was the Fire Mass, but to have experienced that, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Just to be clear for listeners, this is not rock or pop. This is classical choral and, a very, very different feeling. And I know that, if there's one takeaway from this time, it's that it seems like everyone's experiences were vastly different during that time. And that the experience in looking back, or even Ellen, I think you're still involved with them, right?
With the foundation, I am.
Oh, yeah. That everyone just had a vastly different experience. But certainly as a contrast to what you did with the free design, certainly there's the layering of voices, and that's just about where the connection stops. Although there's, I think, 10 voices, not a small handful. There's a lot of voices going on. Okay. I'm really curious because life is so mysterious. It started to happen in the late 90s, right? There were the first rumblings of a resurgent interest in the albums that you had done, which at that point was ancient history to you guys. So At first it was Cornelius, I believe, reissuing your back catalog, and then it wound up being Light in the Attic, and then it just kind of waved out from there. Tell me about Cosmic Peekaboo.
My condition for joining that project was that we got to do some of my songs. And Chris said, okay, I had like 5-6 songs ready, but managed to get 2 or 3 on there.
You got 3 on there, and they're all killers.
Yeah, McCarran Airport is a hit.
I mean, it's a shockingly strong album for a group that really had not been together for 30 years, if you consider, Bruce, that, you had left in 70. So 30 years, and it's like you picked right back up. The only thing that was really different that I can point to is a cleaner, more digital sound and the soprano sax. It's like time hadn't really passed, which, I attribute that to family. But it's a wonderful album. I'll give it 3 3/4 stars. Then Light in the Attic come into the picture and reissue your catalog and put out the Now Sound Redesigned, which is so great. And I want to thank Light in the Attic because they gave me permission to use the 1-minute intro. I'm going to be using it during all the Michelle Phillips shows and to introduce this series. It's a great introduction if people are unschooled in the free design ways. So I know Chris passed in 2010, August 6, 2010, esophageal cancer, right?
Yeah, he had a throat tumor.
Did he suffer for a while or was it he did?
Yeah, I was there just about every other day. Yeah. He was on pain meds, so, we had easy times, but then rough times, yeah.
He tried this solution and that solution. He traveled to Europe, and he really fought against it, but he didn't win.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And I'm guessing it brought up a lot of stuff at that time, because just having spent 5 hours with you guys, I know sometimes I got to reach in deep and try to, yank stuff out of you guys. So I like to think that during that time, things were said that allowed some peace to occur with whatever happened in, really what really was a family business. Because ultimately what you did was you put a huge infusion of love out into the world. Regardless of what went down in the Dedrick house behind closed doors, it was just a tidal wave of love.
Yeah.
That's the effect that you had.
I can tell you this, that at some point, Chris wrote a letter or a composition about his relationship with me when we were kids. And the gist of it was that at some point, we had our differences and everything. And it wound down by his expressing his regrets about certain things. It was neat to get that. I know, sort of brought a closure to any differences that we've had. And, when he was sick, Sandy was up there all the time, but I got up there quite a few times. And, we were brothers.
Yeah, that counts first.
So Notwithstanding, the surface level stuff, when the three of you are just doing dishes or taking out the trash, no matter how weird or bizarre, what's the way that Chris enters your thoughts? Is it a snatch of melody? Is it a vision of him in the studio? Is it, him being a taskmaster? What is it exactly?
I think of us playing basketball. And kites are fun.
There's that dissonance and resolution.
Yeah, right.
And I want to point out that seemingly the story will never end, because just a few months ago, in 2023, the Shepherds and Wise Men single came out, which is a staggering period recreation of your 1968 track from the Air Force album, produced by Fernando Perdomo with Probin Gregory's assistance. And it's just perfect. He basically used AI to take that track and to flesh it out, and it could be a hit. I mean, it's just hit. It's fantastic. I give it 5 stars. I hope there's an endless stream of free design stuff coming down the pike. Now I want to just ratchet it back just a second. January 20th, 1980, Art passed away, and I just want to read something that really caught me from the book, if I can. So, around that time when your father passed, he had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. It metastasized to his bones. And in November of 79, he and Mom the Bomb, Jessie, decided to go back to Tucson and avoid the harsh Delavan winter. And one evening, Jason was in the hospital room with him, and he was, I guess, on morphine. And Sandy, you had called, and Jason told you that your dad sounded confused, probably from the morphine. And he looked up with clear eyes and said, "I'm not confused," and then began to describe what he was experiencing at the time, which, from the sound of it here, was an experience of total lucidity. And Jason just grabbed a book and started scribbling on the inside front cover. And I just want to read this one paragraph, because to me, I mean, nothing explains the magic of what you do than, if I can use, Bruce, the word umbrella, than the umbrella of love and music that Art provided for you. So amongst all these other things he said, if everyone could see how much music can do for the world, if it's pure, you don't have to make choices. This goes for music, but also is true on another level. In music, if the mind is attuned to the pure spirit, you don't have to decide whether to go to a stronger key or experiment. In life, you won't be faced with confusion over what to do. Things will happen because there can be no other way. You won't have to worry about it. A flat isn't the same as G sharp. Take an F chord and lower the root. It's not F major 7 in this key, but A minor 6. But it's not that important. Too much effort is wasted on analyzing music instead of feeling it. It's a great lesson.
It is.
It's a great lesson. I felt profoundly moved just reading that from the book, and I wanted to put that out there. And what I really love about this book, too, is that, there's a little bit about the free design, but it really, I find that having read this, that a lot of what makes the free design is apparently what your parents were able to do for you under extreme duress. And the whole thing is really a tribute to them. And it's a beautiful piece for that reason.
Definitely. Thank you.
Agree. 100%.
So, Sandy, one thing that you said is that, to me, all that has been happening with the music of the free design in recent times could be summed up in 2 of the lines from one of Chris's songs called Star Magic. Life is a perfect circle and love is its center.
Yeah.
That's kind of all I have to say about things, except I want to talk about the overview and shape of your arc. So I always do a little piece at the end, because when I foist all this music on myself, sometimes maybe I'm wildly off, but I'm able to at least see from 30,000 feet what it looks like to me as an arc. But you guys don't really have an arc that I can see. So here's the little thing that I wrote. Dissonance and resolution. Your career doesn't follow the typical arc of shooting for the stars and then plummeting back down to earth as time has its way with you. Instead, the arc is the earthbound pull of chaos and sorrow, aka dissonance, versus the sigh of relief brought by the inevitable resolution that's always coming at us right around the corner in your music. In that sense, free design music manufactures optimism out of thin air. For better or worse, the free design weren't together long enough for rot to manifest. Instead, you've created this perfect enshrinement of crystalline beauty, inviolable and immaculate and available for all of us and generations to come to be soothed by for the rest of time immemorial. It's helped me in my life more than you could ever be aware, and I know many others who feel the same. So the arc of your career, no matter how inadequately Project 3 was able to market you at the time, crests on a high and simply remains there, preserved in amber forever and ever and ever. Your work, like the sound you all created together, is as close to perfect as it gets. My top 3 records, I'm going to have to go with a tie for number 3 between Sing for Very Important People and You Could Be Born Again. Number 2, Stars, Time, Bubbles, Love. Number 1, Kites Are Fun. My least favorite would be One by One, but you don't have a single bad record. You don't have a single record that's not great, actually.
Thank you.
And my favorite thing about this interview is it's not at all hard to make you 3 feel uncomfortable at the exact same time.
I think we're uncomfortable with praise.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Very appreciative, though. It's just,
Oh, yeah, Dave, thank you very much.
yes, thank you.
Thank
What
you,
a
Dave.
great job. Somebody asked me the other day, how did it go on the first interview? And I said, oh, I think it went well. I said, but, Dave knows more about us than we do.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, it's true. That's true.
It's true.
All right, that about does it. If you liked what you just heard, please Venmo me a tip at David-Gebroe, Gebroe, because this is how I make a living. And stay tuned, because next week we've got a career-spanning interview with Tom Bailey from the Thompson Twins. Okay, here's how it works. This Monday, the Ultimate Cut rolls out for our Patreon's major tier. It's the show as it was truly intended to be heard, ad-free, and with all the essentials left intact. And then on Wednesday, the lieutenants get their slightly shorter edit. And then on Friday, the rest of you penny pinchers get to join in on the action. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful wife and son, Jen and Mason, Sandy, Ellen, and Bruce Dedrick, Fernando Perdomo, Light in the Attic Records, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, and access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into the greatest music ever made from the 1960s is to leap headfirst into my 12-hour interview with Jules Alexander and Terry Kirkman, the 2 founding members of Monterey Pop opening act The Association. That's episodes 110 to 113. Vashti Bunyan rating her entire catalog. That's 103 and 104. Os Mutantes Sergio Diaz on the early days of the band, that's 86 and 87. Bert Summer, 83 and 84. A tribute to David Crosby, that's 77 and 78. Lou Barlow rates the Zombies, that's 59 and 60. Bob Forrest on the band, that's 25 and 27. Monkees manager Andrew Sandoval rating the Monkees, that's 22 and 23. The Bee Gees Psychedelic Beginnings, that's episode 10. And Sly and the Family Stone, episodes 5, 6, and 7. Join us during the upcoming week. This Sunday, you can expect another deliriously sociopathic entry of Rudy Fishman's Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Get to know your new music-obsessed friends. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, July 12th, we're coming at you with Tom Bailey from the Thompson Twins. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!